Sean and Justin made it. Theme was previously stated. About to start, so glad I waited. Somehow related.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. I'm Sean.
And I'm Justin. We're somehow related.
Indeed, we are. This is the show where each week Justin and I have a little chat about something that's somehow related to what we talked about last week.
So, Sean, last week we talked about bombing and, big swings and misses. And I was thinking, speaking of swing and a miss, how about that Cyberpunk 2077, huh?
Yeah, I never played it, but I remember Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, everyone does. I thought that would be an interesting topic to get into a little bit of the history on that, because it's really I don't think it's a big exaggeration to say it's one of the bigger gaming, let's say, flubs or even disasters.
I remember the drama for sure.
Yeah,
I never played it, but I remember all the drama around it for sure.
And just the development, I think the development history of it and what it kind of is indicative of as a problem in the gaming industry is really interesting. So, let's just kind of get into that a little bit. Just a little bit of a history lesson, right? So, Cyberpunk, this was kind of news to me. I thought it was kind of an original IP to CD Projekt Red, but it's actually an RPG tabletop game. And Cyberpunk 2077 was actually on CDPR's radar for a long time. CDPR is the name of the studio.
Oh, that made the game.
Yeah, CD Projekt Red. They're called that because back in the day, they basically made CDs of games and stuff. Because they're based in Poland.
Okay.
And so they made them available, I think games or something available to people in that corner of the world. And then they branched off into making games. But they kept the name CD Projekt Red.
Okay.
CDPR for short.
Cool.
Or maybe it's Projekt Red. I've kind of heard it different ways. It's Projekt.
If any Polish listeners can let us know.
Polish. So, back in the day, they wanted to adapt either Cyberpunk or The Witcher. And The Witcher was a series of books written by a man with a Polish name in Poland. And I say that because I forgot his name. Anyway, but it's very popular in Poland. Some time ago, Barack Obama, I think towards the tail end of his presidency, was his diplomatic gift from Poland was it was either the game The Witcher or it was one of the books.
He's awesome. It was the game.
Yeah. But they're very proud of it.
Never going to play this.
Yeah, I bet he is right now. But CD Projekt Red took on the Witcher series, starting, of course, with The Witcher 1 on PC. Very kind of rudimentary by our standards affair now. But it did okay. And then with Witcher 2 on the 360, it kind of gained them some traction. But the real headliner was The Witcher 3, which came out, I think, in 2015.
I've heard of that.
And that put him on the map. Honestly, it's widely considered to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest RPG of all time. And it's definitely on lists of the greatest game of all time.
Really?
So if you are a studio that's not a big one like EA or something, and then one of your games is called probably one of the best games of all time, you kind of get a big head about it, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've never been in that situation, I would imagine.
Well, I have. I just don't talk about it. So the studio, with its success, before Witcher 3 actually even came out, they announced that Cyberpunk was going to be their next endeavor.
And people, just really quick, so I can interject with my thoughts. People love Witcher 3, as you just brought out, to the point where I'm really not plugged into what's going on with gaming, but I've heard countless people espouse their love of Witcher 3, and we all probably know the Netflix series with Henry Cavill.
Yeah, that game,
The Witcher.
That game directly led to the series being made, I'm pretty sure. And when the first season came out on Netflix, they tracked, at least on Steam, I think, people hopped right back on the game on Steam, and a ton of players played that game again. And so it's one of those things where that game is it's a huge game, hundreds of hours of content, and all kinds of stuff to do. The writing is praised. In terms of just the dialogue, and in terms of the questing and stuff, very very deep, very well respected. And CDPR cultivated this image that it was one of the few gaming studios that was for the gamers. Like, you look at EA, and EA, they monetize everything, all kinds of DLCs that aren't worth it, microtransactions up the wazoo, and then CDPR puts out 2 expansions to The Witcher 3 called Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, and they're very large expansions to the game. It's not like they were just like armor pieces and items, but they were like fully fledged. One was a whole new area to journey to, and they both had new side missions and like dozens, if not another couple hundred hours of content on them. And it was all for just one reasonable price. And so that's what gamers want. Right. There was no strings attached. It was not predatory. And CDPR was considered the anti-EA, basically,
right,
for a long time.
EA not popular with gamers.
EA, Electronic
Especially
Arts.
Since Battlefront.
Battlefront 2 was a huge debacle. That could have been a swing and a miss. Follow up by what this instead.
Yeah. That, just a side note, as something I know, is the most downvoted comment of all time on Reddit is from EA talking about the loot crate situation on Battlefront 2.
Well, because it came out, and I don't have notes on this specifically, but I just remember like it came out that like Battlefront 2 had so much stuff to pay for to buy. Like they said, like technically you can get all this stuff just by like playing,
right?
But it would take like thousands of hours,
right?
And to buy it is like thousands of dollars,
yeah.
And so that's clearly like just them like technically you can get it for free, but really they're just getting it like money out of you. And that's all they want, and they're like really milking it.
It was not cool.
And their reasoning when asked about it, like, wait, what's the deal with this? They said, well, we want players to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment, and showing off what they earn,
Yeah,
like,
that was the phrase, presence, pride, accomplishment, and that's still a meme on Reddit. People will say,
yeah, that's a rallying
pride and accomplishment. And I'm gonna repeat myself a few times that I'm not plugged into the gaming community or the world or anything like that. I'm not saying that to distance myself from it, but more just to give like perspective that when I say I know what was going on, I know how upset people were about Battlefront, like that's how upset they were. Like I'm not even into gaming, and even I knew what was going on.
Yeah. Gamers, like EA is typically not, it doesn't get thrown about by the whims of gamers, and the outcry was so strong against it. I mean, the game also had loot boxes where you had to, like, you bought these boxes and it was kind of like you didn't know what was in them. Like really close to gambling. That's what EA and the industry as a whole skirts really close to.
Right.
Like, is this gambling?
Yeah.
And Battlefront 2 was like really soaked in that, and eventually EA really tweaked it to more of what it should have been. But by that time, a lot of damage was done.
Right.
And its reputation was really soured. But so CDPR positions itself as basically like the savior in terms of, because so many studios like Blizzard and BioWare had come and then fallen from grace, and CDPR even on Twitter would say like we could like bash other studios, like this is a single player game we're putting out, you pay for it once, like it's gonna be a full package, it's not gonna be broken. And like it sounds like to folks listening who don't know the gaming scene, like that sounds like really kind of middling and normal, but that's really kind of a lot to expect from a game studio nowadays.
Yeah.
Usually your products are, especially like the bigger the studio, the more broken the game is, and the more microtransactions you have to shell out to just get kind of a normal gaming experience, in addition to the price you pay for the game in some cases.
That we usually use the word amateur as kind of a negative thing, like someone who doesn't know what they're doing. But that word, like what it comes from, it means someone who does something for the love of it, amateur, And so in that sense of the word, it sounds like this Mr. Polish gaming studio seems like it's like the amateur gaming studio.
Almost, yeah. Like they do it because they're passionate about it, and they don't want to. Like they have investors, but not their decisions are made like for the gamers as opposed to just the investors.
Pretty cool.
And that was a breath of fresh air. But then let's continue the story, huh? Mm-hmm. So anyway, in May of 2012, they announced their next game would be Cyberpunk 2077. Mm-hmm. And this is while they're working on The Witcher 3. So it's still kind of like they had done The Witcher 2, and that was successful, but it wasn't like a tidal wave of praise, right?
Yeah.
The first teaser trailer was released for Cyberpunk at E3 2013. Oh, wow. So I'm going to say, I'm going to keep track of how much time goes by, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, it gets announced May 2012.
Okay.
Just keep remembering that.
And I'm going to even go with my ages here. Let's see. May 2012, I would have been, wow, I can't even do basic math. 16. I'd have been 16.
Right.
Well, 15 actually. I would have turned 16 a couple months later.
When they announced it. And I remember that first teaser trailer at E3 2013. Mm-hmm. It was actually a good... It was very atmospheric. It drew you in. It was like really interesting, but it was a cinematic trailer, and I don't trust cinematic trailers now because it really doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah,
it's just like what their idea is. But nevertheless, once you release a trailer, especially, but once you announce a game is in development, the clock is ticking. It needs to come out,
right?
And then gamers, their imaginations run wild, mm-hmm. and they will only wait for so long. So, it gets announced in 2012. Development begins after The Witcher 3 comes out.
Oh, and it came out in 2015. It came out in 2015.
So development began in earnest in 2016 for Cyberpunk.
I was 20.
So yeah, so all that time that. Honestly, probably most people watching it, like gamers, thought they were working on it. Nothing was being done.
Yeah.
It was just basically like a glint in their eye until 2016. That's when they started working on it in earnest. Okay. So they have the tremendous goodwill from The Witcher 3. Basically, they feel invincible. Right. They just put out like one of the best games ever made. Mm-hmm. And they have a vision for it, and it kind of is similar to Witcher 3 in some ways. Like it's a third person role playing game, big world, and just like adventure and fun. Things apparently take a turn in 2017 when they get a new game director. Hope I get his last name right though, but Adam Badowski. He comes in and he has thoughts of his own. Mm-hmm. Apparently, and direction of the game changes in some kind of fundamental ways.
He's been
thinking. I didn't catch too many specifics, but apparently, there was enough headbutting that people resigned over kind of his ideas and where he was taking the game.
Wow.
Initially, it was conceived as a third-person experience, mm-hmm. With like flying cars and stuff. He brought it more towards a first-person experience without flying cars.
Okay.
And I don't care much about the flying cars, but that's just indicative of like.
Well, yeah. There's two things that you described, and he changed both of them.
And both of them got changed. Yeah. I think the perspective is more important than the cars. A lot of people online care a lot about the cars. The flying cars. Like that, yeah. I mean, it sounds cool, but I don't need it. But people like it enough to where like there's mods out there now that put flying cars in there. But there was pushback over the change to first person, but he got his way anyway, and it was kind of chipped away at. Initially it was like, okay, it's gonna be a third person game, and then they kind of cut it back to be like, well, it's gonna be first person when you're playing, but like cutscenes are gonna be mm-hmm. third person, similar to Fallout 4. So and this is important, I say, because the game has a character creator. Unlike Witcher 3. Witcher 3, you play as a set person, but in Cyberpunk, it's all about... You play Henry Cavill in Witcher 3.
Wish.
In Cyberpunk, you create your character from the ground up, right? You from gender to appearance to super detailed, right? So like that's your character. You want to see them.
Yeah. Or do you get into character creation?
Like in general?
Yeah, do you get really into it?
Yeah, I do. Character creation is really fun. I would love a game where, like, you have, like, a whole party of people and, like, you, like, character create all of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Interesting. Wow. It doesn't really get me like that.
Really?
I don't think I have the patience. Yeah.
I don't know, I just love it. I like the best part of The Sims for me is when I'm creating my family, and
Well,
after
yeah,
that it gets boring. I just don't care for it. I don't know. So it's something about character creator. I like making like a cool looking person, or like I don't know, just whatever, you know.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Because there's so many options. I don't know, that I've always been that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so when I first heard that it had a character creator, I got really excited. But then I saw like eventually like it's basically all going to be first person. Like that really took some wind out of my sails, to where I don't see the point. Why would you even include character creation if you're never going to see them?
Like I said, apparently I was 16 when they first announced it, and I was 20 when they started working on it. I don't remember when I heard about this game first. I probably did. You probably told me something about it when I was 16 when the teaser came out. But I do remember that when I did start hearing about it, like for real hearing about it, every now and then like a game comes along, like a game is announced and people are hyped for it. They're excited for it. Cyberpunk 2077, right? 2077? Mm-hmm. When I was hearing about that, it was like in the context where people felt like this was going to change gaming forever. I mean, this wasn't just supposed to be an exciting, cool game. This was supposed to be like a landmark historical piece of media or art, basically.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Hype was going through the roof. They would made all kinds of promises. Like the immersion level in this game would be unmatched. As far like that was what they were pitching. Like trailers and footage and stuff that they would show off was really impressive. But it turns out that those like gameplay trailers that they would put out would be very much fabricated.
Which is pretty common, actually. With
it is
E3
common.
stuff.
People call them vertical slices, which I think is a bit of a generous term. But anyway, we'll get more to that in a second. But the reason behind the perspective change from third to first, it was given as like a way to increase immersion, which maybe for some folks that is true.
Right.
First person's more immersive, but I think that's like if you're playing Call of Duty as kind of like a faceless dude, then sure.
Right.
But if you're like creating a character, I feel like that's counterproductive. And a reason they gave was because like say like hallways, it was hard to program the camera for third person for like say hallways and alleys if it's cramped. You know. Sure. But there's plenty of third person games that don't have that problem.
Yeah.
And like you look at the buildings and stuff in Cyberpunk, and they're not really you could totally fit a camera in there.
It seems like it's a solvable problem for sure.
I think it's not a problem at all. I think that was given. I'll be honest. I think that was really just kind of a smokescreen. I think they just didn't want to program like facial animations and like character models and stuff for third persons to really like let's make it a little easier.
And for me personally, I think I prefer third person, even for immersion's sake, because first person I'm aware of, I don't know, like your hands are just always up, like you're not, you know, like you're not moving how you would normally move. And in third person, I'm at least watching a human body move the way a human body moves, you know?
Like you watch a movie and it doesn't take you out of it because you see all the actors on screen.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like the one movie, Hardcore Henry, where it wasn't first person, it just didn't land.
Yeah.
And I think kind of what you were talking about before, gameplay trailers.
Yeah.
Gameplay trailers, they have kind of an appearance of being more authentic, right? Because like this isn't a cinematic trailer where it's basically we just created this from scratch and it's just like our idea. This is like footage from in the game and it's real and like this is like the real deal. But that wasn't the case. And so the first gameplay trailer dropped in 2018. So if we're keeping track, that's about 6 years after the announcement.
And if anybody is like, in case you've never played a game, you know, the reason that's a problem is because if you play a game, the cutscene, the way you're capable of creating in a cutscene without playability is so many miles ahead of what actual gameplay looks like.
Yeah.
So if you're presenting that as if it's gameplay, you're essentially, I mean, you're basically setting people up to think that they're going to be playing a game that is a decade ahead of everything else.
Yeah. And they have ways of kind of fudging it a bit. Like the term, like, they'll stick the term, like, in-engine, or in-game engine footage.
Yeah.
In the gameplay trailer to make it seem like, oh, this is, like, in the game. Right. But it's not.
Just means they use the same engine to render it. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, it's kind of like you know, the food industry, they say like it's made with real meat, but like 2% meat.
Yeah.
It's like this very similar thing. It's more of a mirage than anything. And like I said, they call it a vertical slice because it's not like the whole game's not done, but like we have like all the layers done for this one little section, and
Right.
we're gonna show that off. But like really, it's not. I don't think it's that simple. In fact, the gameplay trailer, which showed off really cool ideas, really cool promises, really like impressive looking animations, and you know, all of that stuff, and action. It took away from the development of the game itself.
Yeah.
So like people left developing the actual game to work on this like little
These vertical
trailer.
slices.
So that ended up just like, you know, cutting them off at the knees in a way. And I think that's a symptom of the industry's knack for using like smoke and mirrors tactics, right? To trick consumers.
If you want the most egregious example, I honestly think is whenever Microsoft was first pitching Kinect.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, at this point, we probably all know Kinect is just kind of the fun little toy that tracks your movements, and it's fun for the Microsoft roller coaster. I don't remember what this.
The idea was it was a camera that came with your Xbox, and it watches you and like maps your body to where like you use your body as the controller.
Yeah, and when it was pitched, it was like Minority Report. I mean, it was like the most amazing technology you can imagine, and it was. They pitched like a game with a little virtual boy named Milo who could hear what you were saying and respond to you, and it was like this super advanced AI. They were pitching it like it was a game. It was it was a video. It was made up, and it was just an actor timing her lines and responses and everything with the video on screen.
Yeah.
Eddie Burback does a really great video on it if you want to look it up.
I remember that video too. It looked revolutionary.
I remember
but
too,
it was nothing.
time.
It was nothing. It was just a pitch, really. But they presented it as
It's a concept piece.
but they presented it as like, this is what we have.
Yeah.
And like, isn't this cool? It reminds me a little bit of like, you know, the Fire Festival. You know, they say like you have to
similar.
lie to get investors to make the lie truth.
Yeah, kind of.
Which is a pretty messed up business tactic. And like they did that a lot with the Kinect, especially. There's footage of like, you know, them at E3, and like it's a video, and you see like the actions on screen happening like a quarter second before the person does the action, rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So he just practiced the motions, but they're passing it off as like, this is real, but it's fake.
A Wii Remote was a better motion capturing, device than Kinect was.
Definitely. So rather than putting out something solid, like the industry tends to trick you into thinking something solid and then selling you snake oil in a way, and hoping you don't get pissed off too much to throw up a stink. With this game, CDPR, poor management at this point was in pretty full swing and would color the game's entire production. Management just kept changing their minds on the fly, pushing people to like unreasonable like expectations, a little bit of feature creep, which is like, oh, let's add this feature in there, but they're not ready for it, and they add more. At the same time, it doesn't work, forcing them to cut stuff. And this whole time, it's internally, people are seeing like it's kind of not really coming together. It's falling apart. CDPR, though, online is cultivating its savior status on Twitter, again, by slamming other companies who use unfair and predatory practices. We're not going to cheat you out of anything. All we do is say these guys suck. We're awesome.
Yeah.
At the last second, they threw in a GTA style police system, which I do not understand why that's necessary. That's a GTA thing, but I think they were just following what was popular.
Yeah, that seems like like just a mimic.
GTA 5, GTA Online, like, oh, that's in there. We need to do that too. So like if you do a crime, the police will follow you, and there's like a star system, and like the more wanted you are, they'll come after you. But that was implemented so late into the game or into the development that it's very much not solid. Like, police just pop out of nowhere, and then it's all you gotta do is turn a corner basically, and they lose you. It's just more distracting than anything because it's just not a good system.
I've never made a video game. I have to imagine that GTA is not an easy video game to make because they haven't made one since, I mean, how long has it been? I mean, it's been forever.
Yeah.
It's across 3 consoles now. They haven't made one because it seems like a very difficult game to make. I don't think it's something you can just be, oh, we'll do the thing from GTA, throw it in the game, you know.
Yeah. And I think that shows a lack of confidence in your own game. Mm-hmm. Like The Witcher 3, lauded as one of the best games ever, does not have a police system in there, a wanted system in there. Right. But they felt the need, we need to kind of copy some GTA stuff.
Right.
And another thing that CDPR would slam other studios on was crunch culture. Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, crunch culture is a very toxic practice in the gaming industry specifically, where to push a project out on time, they make, if not outright, heavily imply that employees have to work really, really long hours, 13, 16-hour days for months at a time, really just hitting it hard. It's a crunch. And that's a big reason why there's a push to unionize the gaming industry.
Right.
And a lot of studios, they say, oh, we don't do that, but it turns out they do.
Yeah.
And CDPR would give other studios crap for doing that. We don't do crunch culture. We love our developers. We love our gamers. We're better than that here.
Yeah.
Turns out they resorted to crunch.
Yeah.
Before too long. There was one employee there that he said, he worked 13-hour days for a long time. They burn out. Developers, similar to special effects houses, they rotate in and out so fast because they just get burned out so fast.
I would imagine, which is going to wreak havoc on your result.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
I mean, programming is, especially with something so complicated as what this game sounds like it's trying to be, I think it's hard enough to have multiple people on there to keep clear communication, and I've got a revolving door of developers on top of that.
Who have to be brought up to speed, basically constantly. And there's got to be a bit of brain drain there with people just leaving, and it's, I don't know, just a big turnaround. It's not helpful to morale. But they did it, and that employee said he had friends, or he knew people there who straight up lost families because all they did was work. And of course, your personal life in that situation has to suffer a ton.
Yeah.
So even if you're home, you're not really home.
Right.
Right? You're probably super on edge and super tired, best circumstances, really toxic personality yourself, worst circumstances. Probably even indulging in coping methods that aren't good.
Self-medication.
I
mean, if you're working 13 hours, there's 24 in a day, so I'm told. So you have the 13 hours, then you have 11 hours. Hopefully 8 of those are sleep. So that's 3 hours, and let's say it takes you a half an hour to get to work, half an hour to get back. That's 2 hours that you're not at work, sleeping, or driving. So, I mean, 2 hours to dedicate
more than enough
to give to your family. I mean,
no. So they really resorted to that. But even with the crunch culture, that did not help them put the game out on time. Mm-hmm. This brings us to the delays section. Ooh. And this game is known for a lot of things, but delays are a big one. Mm-hmm. So the initial release date for this game was April of 2020. Okay. And if there's anything about 2020 we know, is that there was a curveball thrown at everybody in 2020.
Yeah.
So naturally the game got pushed to September of that year. It's okay, it's COVID. Everyone's working from home. It's weird for everybody. A lot of things got pushed back. All right.
April of 2020 would have been the perfect time for that game to come out.
Because we were so close to the singularity.
Yes. No, I mean, maybe February of 2020 would have been the actual perfect time for it. A big game to come out.
Do it right before.
Yeah, everybody stays home.
Stuff.
Yeah.
That Animal Crossing really hit that.
Oh, it did
at the right time.
I love Animal Crossing.
So COVID, it pushes it back, but honestly, I think that not to call COVID convenient.
Oh, it sounds like it was. I mean, it hit really a month before the release.
Yeah. So
I don't think it would cause a 6-month delay.
Yeah. Well, it ended up being get a load of this. So it pushed back to September. From there, it was delayed again to November 2020.
Okay.
And then finally ended up being pushed back again to December of 2020.
Dang.
So it's not unusual for a game to get pushed back. What is unusual is for a game to get pushed back so much. And gamers following on Twitter would, like the dreaded white, or not white, but like the dreaded yellow box was what they didn't want to see, because CDPR would use a graphic, like it would be like a yellow box, because Cyberpunk's color scheme was like yellow, like bright yellow and like blue and pink or something, And on this bright yellow box with like blue print, they would announce and then apologize for like a delay. And so they got used to seeing that like a good handful, like half dozen times. And naturally, they got very frustrated.
I'm now 24 in this story, by the way.
Yeah, so it's 2020. It announced in 2012. That's an 8-year gap between games, and that is very unusual.
Yeah.
Like you have a child, a baby born in 2012. They're 8 years old by the time the game finally comes out.
Man.
That's how long
let's
you're
see.
like...
It's announced when Obama's starting his second term.
Yes.
Then you have the Trump administration. And by the time it comes out, December 2020, it came out December 2020. So Biden's been elected at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So 8 years is a long time. 8 years with nothing coming out. Like some people, like other games are labeled like dead in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Twitter followers got frustrated. They would hate like all these announcements and apologies for delays and like not a lot of like updates and stuff. As always, they were mixed with delays, the gamers. Mm-hmm. Some wanted the game to be, like as good as it could be. And there's always folks that say, take your time, put out a good game rather than a broken one. And, CDPR still has this status as like knowing what's best. So they would say like, well,
they have a lot of
CDPR, CDPR would at times say like it's going to come out when it's ready, And so they would take that on faith, like, okay, well, it's not ready yet. Then I'm okay waiting, Yeah. But then increasingly, as time went on, they would get frustrated with the delays.
Yeah.
These gamers would. And as people on Twitter are wont to do, they would send death threats to the developers, which was definitely not acceptable. Pretty, right? Super reasonable. Like, why do people keep sending death threats on Twitter? Just stop, dude.
Just for everything.
You guys, for everything. Everyone gets death threats on Twitter. So anyway, yeah. Cyberpunk finally comes out 8 years after it's announced, after many delays, after crunch, after all this, switching up, like basically developing, like building the train, or no, like setting the tracks in front of a train while it's going, that kind of development.
Right.
You would think that the game would be incredible after that, but signs of the game's underbaked status were even like kind of bubbling up even before the release. Mm-hmm. Before a game comes out, they send review copies to official outlets as well as to maybe select YouTubers with like a big following. You request a review code, and then they give you a code, and then you download it. Say like for the PC version or the Xbox version.
Right.
People who requested PC codes, and I think Xbox X and PS5 codes got them, but no codes for the PS4 and Xbox One versions were sent out. That's definitely, remember that. Take note of that. So the first wave of reviews were fairly positive, actually.
Okay.
Like, it was a bit of like, okay, the game's fine. There were a lot of features we were looking forward to that didn't make it into the game. Like I mentioned, flying cars, or like certain, like, it lacked a little bit of polish, like the AI wasn't great. Like in 2012, it was pretty acceptable to have crowds of people that didn't really do anything. They just walked around with no real rhyme or reason. But like you look at, say, Red Dead or anything like that, and like NPCs actually have lives they live out when you're not around them. Yeah. And it's clear that Cyberpunk...
I think it's Skyrim, where you could just pick an NPC and follow them, and you'd see them live their whole daily life.
It's great. Yeah. So in Skyrim, like if that's the case, Skyrim was even older. Like that came out in 2011. So it's very much not the industry standard to have NPCs just walking around just to give the illusion of a crowd. But that was the case in Cyberpunk. So that was an indication like something is kind of off here.
Yeah.
But then the first wave of reviews that were positive were followed by another one that was very sour. It became abundantly clear that the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game were not exaggerating to say they were broken. And that's
So
not
you said they only sent out review codes for the PC.
PC and I think the next gen versions of the
Okay.
game.
Higher computing power.
Higher computing power. And this is not a small detail because in 2020 we had next gen, but you couldn't find them for one.
Yeah.
And they're pretty new for another.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's still in 2022. It's pretty. You can't just walk into a Best Buy and buy a PS5.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I
hard.
think you still can.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they're not exactly crazy easy to get. In 2020, it was almost impossible.
Yeah.
So not the majority of people would have been playing on a PS4 or an Xbox One.
Yeah.
You know, maybe PC were like was a decent market. Yeah. Yeah, those versions were broken. Game breaking glitches were just everywhere in those versions. At best, you know, there's compilations of like just kind of funny glitches where people are like walking through walls or like your character model just freezes or like weather changes, but those are the funny ones that take you out of it. But then there's other ones where like the game just crashes and you can't
Right. A game
progress.
breaker.
You can't progress in the game.
Yeah.
And the game, it just wasn't optimized for that hardware.
Truly, one of the most frustrating experiences ever.
Yeah.
A game-breaking glitch.
A game-breaking glitch on a game that, you know, basically, for all we knew was...
It's supposed to be the messiah of games, basically.
Yeah, it's hard to convey, like, the hype for this game was astronomical. Like you mentioned before, gamers, like, thought this was going to change everything. Mm-hmm. Because CDPR told them it would change everything. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's not just like a game, like, oh, it's a normal game and it's not great. Like, games often come out with bugs.
Yeah.
But this was a whole nother level of bugs. It was not ready to come out yet.
Yeah.
It was not ready. Even after all the delays and the years of development, the game somehow was still not ready. They put it out because they had to. They felt like they had to put it out.
Right.
In an unprecedented move, Sony took the game down from the PlayStation Store, which they don't do.
Yeah.
And they had never done. But the game was
just so broken.
So broken, they took it off of the store, so you couldn't buy it on their store.
Wow.
Microsoft kept it up, but they put a warning on it.
That's so
They put
bad.
a warning not to play it on Xbox One.
That's so bad.
Yeah.
Because it just straight up didn't work.
Because it straight up just didn't work.
Wow.
On consoles that most people still had. Like I said, CDPR had... And this is when it came to light that CDPR had engaged in crunch. And all this is not to put it on the developers. You know, developers, the ones who actually make the game.
Yeah.
You know, they do what they can, but they're at the whims of management.
Right.
I think it really was management who let them down. All this was because, you know, it was poor planning, you know, like adding features last second, changing things mid-course, pushing them to do try unreasonable things. It undercut good faith moves. What's particularly egregious, I think, in this case was, like I said, games come out and they have bugs. Mm-hmm. And they get patched all the time. We're kind of used to that at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes like, oh, we didn't realize it did that, or something. But this move of management choosing to withhold those review copies for the PS4 and Xbox One versions.
They knew.
That is a deliberate choice. Yeah, they
Yeah.
knew. They wanted to capitalize on the wave of pre-orders. Mm-hmm. And that's that's the way the industry is now. Mm-hmm. As they capitalize on pre-orders, they make it look really good before it comes out. Like, pre-orders for games are like opening weekends for movies, right? That's really where all the money comes from, and that's really all they care about.
Right.
And CDPR wanted to, like, they didn't want to sour the pre-orders.
Yeah.
They withheld that information, so people bought games. The game didn't work, and I think CDPR they were forced to engage in a refund program, but obviously they didn't want to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It just blew up in their face. It was deceitful. It was unethical.
Yeah.
I think. I mean,
evil.
pretty immoral. Yeah. They knew they had. They knew it was broken. And they rather than maybe release those versions later. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the game should have been pushed back again, or it should have only been a next gen release.
Yeah.
But they wanted to capitalize on that market.
Right.
On the market of last gen.
Yeah.
And they didn't know when to say no. Yeah, essentially they tried to steal players' money, which made them no better.
Yeah.
In fact, probably even worse.
I'd say worse than
Worse,
EA.
they made them worse than EA and all the studios that they spent so many years dunking on.
Yeah.
And like, look, we're not them, you know?
We're worse.
Yeah.
EA at the
they're
very
worse.
least is never as upfront, you know.
Yeah.
They do lame stuff, but they don't lie. I don't think, you know, they at least they didn't come out and say like, you know, there's no microtransactions on Battlefront 2, and then they release it and there's a ton, you know.
They'll use like kind of like corporate speak and like kind
Yeah.
of buzzwords to kind of like trick you into like the, you know, mate with real meat kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't outright tell you this is all real meat, and then
Yeah.
like it's all sand, you know.
And other places are evil for giving you not all real meat.
Yeah.
And that's all we're gonna do.
Yeah,
And
so
that's Taco Bell.
this story
Love
is
Taco Bell though.
Taco Bell's great.
They want to sponsor. I'll take it.
Yeah. So this is a story not just about how this game was pretty awful. It's really a story about how a game studio fell from grace so fast, so hard.
Right.
I think no other game studio was held in such high regard that with one, basically overnight, like became like the pariah of the industry. Nevertheless, CDPR made a tidy profit off of Cyberpunk.
Really?
I think making like something like 300 million.
Whoa.
In like pre-orders or like the first week or something.
That's a lot of money.
Even I don't know how much of that was taken back with the refunds.
Yeah.
But I heard even with the refunds, it's still a profit.
Still kind of cleaned up.
Yeah. So
if everybody in the country gave me $1, I would have that much money.
Dude, you should ask them.
I wish they would.
They're sponsored by everyone. Give us $1. But then, so still, they might see that as a victory. But even then, no matter how much profit this game makes, like CDPR's reputation is pretty shot.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel the pressure, not on this one, but on their next game.
Yeah.
They're going to have to really step it up on their whatever next game they do. Is really going to be unfairly colored by this one. Because no one's going to trust him.
Yeah. I wouldn't even call it unfairly, though. But in terms of the management brought it on themselves.
Well, yeah, in terms of the management, I guess I'm speaking from the perspective of the developers.
Yeah.
Who really did nothing wrong. They were just trying to make a good game, and they get pushed back from management to unrealistic expectations.
Sure.
I would hate to be working on their next game. Like, you try your best, and you want it to be awesome, but then this cloud is hanging over it because of, like, this game you might not have worked on.
It'd be rough.
Yeah.
Do you think, had that new guy not come in, do you think it would have delivered on what it was supposed to be?
I don't know. I don't think it would have entirely delivered, but I think it would have been maybe better because they might have had a more consistent vision that was colored by their classic values.
Right.
I could probably do more research and find out why he wanted to do what he did, what pushed him. To me, it just doesn't make any sense.
What was his position? What was he brought in as?
He was the game director.
He's the game director. Oh,
Yeah, he was
interesting.
So
I wonder what his. I wonder if he was a money guy. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think. I think this game was announced way too early, so that put a ton of pressure on them to release it when they did. I mean, right?
Right.
2012 game comes out in 2020. Usually, like it's like a few years, really.
Yeah.
I feel like usually games are announced probably a good, maybe nowadays, like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, like from initial announcement to being able to play it.
Yeah.
And this like doubled that.
8 years. Well, it didn't even start for.
It didn't even start
3 or
until
4.
for 4. So they announced it before they even had anything.
Yeah.
They should have announced it after Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Like in 2016, maybe. and that would have given him a lot more room. I don't know. I don't know if it was just him, but I think...
I mean, they probably didn't have a whole lot of eyes on them when they announced it. You know?
I don't know. I remember there being a lot of hype even when that trailer came out. But yeah, so that is also... Since then, they've released patches, a couple of major ones so far. Folks have said, like, it's brought the game up to a state that is more what it should have been. It's still not great. Like, I've gone through it, and even at its best, it doesn't leave an impression. Which I think is not a great thing you could say about a game.
No, especially one that took, you know, well, everything that you just said.
Yeah, long time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it's just kind of there.
Yeah, I would really be bummed if I lost my family.
Yeah,
and
the game
nobody really likes the game.
Was like a C. Yeah, it's like when you're playing it, it's like, oh, this is reasonably fun, but then you put it down and you just forget about it immediately.
Oh, that reminds me. This is like sort of related, but I mean, like, it's somehow related. One of Steven Seagal's movies has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Do you think that's worse than a 50%? Or would you rather, like I almost feel like I would rather have a 0% than a 50% if I made a movie.
Really?
Yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes.
I guess. I mean, you make more of an impression on people.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Chance.
Yeah, I think so. But it's also crazy to think, like, man, I would have... This movie would be just as well off as if it never existed. As it is now, existing.
Out of 50, you're like, it's just lukewarm.
Yeah.
That's basically it. That's what I got.
It's messed up.
For this big swing and a miss.
That's messed up.
It's
Talk about a bomb.
It is, yeah, and I would love to see like the Netflix documentary about the production of this game. I would love to see the day-to-day.
For sure.
Yeah.
There definitely could be one. Just like Fire Festival, like you said.
This kind of is the Fire Fest of gaming. Like, it's this event that's like crazy hyped and is like held together by like, you know, toothpicks and tape, basically just on like marketing.
Do you remember Fire Festival? What was going on?
No, not a little bit. Not really when it was going on. I think I remember hearing about it, but it was just like, I didn't really look into it.
I think I read about it on the Awesomer. It was a post on the Awesomer. It was like, this is crazy. Yeah. It's like, look at this music festival. And it was already exorbitantly expensive. And I was at like 16, 15 at the time. So obviously there's no way I could possibly go. But I remember thinking like, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
That's going to be epic. It like 100% going to be.
Totally worked on me.
Yeah.
If I had a bunch of money, it would have worked for sure.
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, I think both this, you know, and Firefest are kind of, you know, symptoms of like kind of where a lot of industries are. Like it's a lot of, like I said, smoke and mirrors, like to kind of just take your money rather than earn your money.
Right.
Like we like to think like capitalism is all about it, like innovation, and whoever puts out the best product is going to get your money. But now it's really like whoever puts out the best impression of a product gets the best money.
Yeah,
and the trick is to get your money before you find out.
The reality turns into whoever can figure out how to get the most money gets the most money. I mean, that's really that's just it.
It's not about like the product is secondary.
Yeah, it may be someone figures it out by making an amazing product, but usually not really.
Like amazing products that they still get your money, but like I don't think that's the rule. No. You know, it's more like
it's not the standard practice.
No, because it's too risky.
That's why it bugs me when people are like, they think that being rich means you're smart. Yeah. It's like, people like if you criticize like I don't know Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whatever, they always have people defending them, being like, well, they have $1 billion. He's not dumb. They have $1 billion, and it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're a sociopath, you could make $1 billion. It doesn't take huge money moves or like huge brain moves to lie to people or steal money. Yeah. Like that's not something it takes a lot to figure out. You just have to be willing to do it.
You just have to be willing to, I mean, and maybe in some cases just take bold choices. Honestly, maybe dumb choices. Right?
Yeah.
Like I think about how like in the beginning, like Amazon like operated at a loss for a long time just to corner the market.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of a dumb move.
Right.
It was proved to be smart in the long run.
Yeah.
But Bezos was just a pretty crazy person.
I wouldn't even say it was smart in the long run. I just think it was a risk. I mean, and I think anybody can look at that and be like, yeah, it could work. It's just too big of a risk for people to take.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to be a genius to think it could work.
It's just a matter of just
Doing it.
doing of it. Yeah. So, dude, millionaires suck.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say that exactly, but I just mean, money is not a virtue. Like people think that if you have a lot of money, you must have had some kind of virtue to get there, but
Yeah.
you don't.
I
You
think
just
that's
had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and that's kind of I don't know if that was ever true, honestly, but I know that was kind of an older narrative at this point that like if you're smart and if you work hard, you will get a lot of money.
Yeah.
Whereas what that doesn't account for is that there's like 200 million people all playing that game.
Yeah.
And
here's an example too,
have losers,
like the big or the Walmart thing coming into a town. It's like it doesn't take a genius to be like, let's just charge not a lot of money until we put all the rest of the stores out of business and then charge more money.
Yeah.
That's not a genius move. You just have to be enough of an evil person to do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's not smart. It's like shrewd, right? Shrewd farms. It's just a willingness to kind of be a little icky.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's seeping into. I think like gamers, like for the most part, as I think the average gamer age is like in their 30s, but overall like the gamer demographic is fairly young, and like I think only recently have we gotten to the point where like we've passed the whole like studios they rely on putting out good games for their profits, and now we're like into the whole like we've caught up to everyone else. Like, okay, our model is to just kind of take your money, and then like good games are more of an accident.
I mean, nobody wants to work hard, so it's like everyone eventually will figure out how to get money.
Yeah, and like this is a bit of a tangent, but this is similar ballpark to me. Like it makes me think of like Disney Plus and the new Andor show that came out, right? I haven't seen it yet, but like people are saying like it looks amazing. And like why does Andor look great when Obi-Wan Kenobi looked really bad? Like production wise. And like honestly my thing is like I think like it's not about putting out a good product like Disney. I just feel like they think like the more baked in an audience, the less effort they have to put into it.
Right.
Because it's just all about the money.
Right.
And like everything above the minimum is a waste.
Right.
And so like kind of with games and stuff, like make a great game, you have to put in more than the minimum.
Yeah.
But like to be encounters, that's a waste. Like what can we get away with? Like what'll do the minimum job? Let's do that.
It's the whole conversation of like, is commercialization and capitalism antithetical to what art is? Who knows? I don't
know. I don't know, but that's a fun topic.
Yeah. Well, it's another day. It's for a different episode.
Let's see how we continue this next time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week for sure.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I love you. Have a great day.
I don't.
About to start, so glad I waited. Somehow related.